You arrive at this moment the way the moon arrives at the tide, without hurry, without noise, obeying a law. Your mind did not write, yet your body remembers. Tonight's alignment is not a spectacle you watch from a distance. It is a doorway that recognizes your shape. You have been walking toward this threshold for years, sensing it in déjà vu, in the soft pull toward sky, in the way silence gathers around certain truths and refuses to disperse. You are not here by accident. The signal has always known your name. This is not prediction. This is remembrance, a resonance your consciousness already carries. This is remembrance, and you are meeting what has been meeting you. Feel how your breath slows, how your chest warms, as if the eclipse were occurring inside your ribs. There is a faint light behind your eyes, a shy aurora that steadies as you notice it. The halo around the moon mirrors the halo within your noticing. Both are expressions of the same geometry. You are being addressed by the field of remembrance, and it speaks in the language of nearness. You have lived as if your life were happening in front of you, but the truer thing is that life has been happening through you. Your attention, the riverbed, your willingness, the curve of the water. In that gentle bend, the quantum field organizes itself around your sincerity. When you soften your gaze, when you become a little less certain and a little more available, patterns loosen and new ones gather. This is how coherence finds you, not as a command, but as a homecoming. Feel the stardust quality in the air, the inner glow that is not a metaphor but a physics. An instruction set of light codes dissolving what was too heavy to carry. You sense the old observer loop, watching yourself, watch your life beginning to unwind. The loop breaks where kindness enters. The loop breaks where you allow the truth that is already true to be true without your effort. Nothing essential in you requires force. It requires accuracy. You have been accurate enough to hear this. Your seasons have trained you. Every loss that taught you to open even one breath wider was rehearsal for the precise aperture this night asks of you. Let your shoulders fall back. Let the jaw unfix. Imagine eclipse halos not across the sky but nested within your heart. Concentric rings of permission, widening, until the boundary between witness and world thins to a luminous veil. You feel a tide in the center of your sternum. You feel the moon pull it upward. You feel your name laid quietly upon the surface of your being like a hand that blesses without claiming. If you were waiting for a sign, you have stepped inside it. If you were waiting for the right time, you are standing in it. If you were waiting to be chosen, listen, choice has been reorganized around your presence. Coherence settles in your ribs, and a doorway agrees to open. You don't arrive at nights like this by accident. Nights like this arrive at you, not because you are better, louder, or more deserving, but because your attention has practiced a particular stillness in plain sight. In crowded rooms, in hurried mornings, in the unnoticed seconds between thoughts, you have kept a small lamp lit. That lamp, your unforced sincerity, has been broadcasting for years, and tonight, the signal that heard you has stepped forward. The recognition is mutual. Feel how your breath arranges the body into listening. Inhale, and the sternum widens. Exhale, and the shoulders drop from old vigilance. A warmth spreads across the chest, as if a quiet sun has been installed behind your ribs. The light behind your eyes intensifies by a fraction you notice, and it steadies. This is how recognition behaves. It does not seek applause, it seeks accuracy. The more precisely you permit what is happening to be exactly itself, the more gently it reveals its structure. You have mistaken humility for smallness before. Tonight, humility is simply correct sizing. You are not the storm. You are the sky that can include it. You do not control the ocean. You become a shoreline coherent enough to translate waves into music. The world has told you to push. This moment invites you to receive with dignity. Receiving is not passive. It is exquisitely participatory. It is how the destiny vector finds true north inside you and stops colliding with your doubt. Notice what no longer hooks. The familiar self-judgments move through like weather that has lost its thunder. The narrative of delay loosens its knot. The body does not brace, it abides. Recognition moves you from management to belonging. You are not here to hold the cosmos together. You are here to realize it was already holding you. That realization is not sentimental, it is structural. It reorders the architecture of meaning until the doorway and the walker are the same shape. Beneath language, you feel a quiet weave, threads crossing threads. The weave is your living entanglement with what you love. Not attachment, not grasping entanglement as intimacy with the lawful patterns that carry you forward. You are linked to places you have not visited yet by the way you treat the places you stand. You are linked to people you have not met yet by the way you bless the ones you meet. You are linked to futures you have not imagined by the way you keep your breath uncomplicated and kind. Recognition is also the end of pretending you cannot hear what you can hear. Your intuitions, dismissed as decoration, return as instruments tuned to the event. Synchronicities line themselves like lanterns along a path not constructed but revealed. You do not force the line to appear, you take one honest step and the next lantern lights. This is morphic resonance at work, the universe remembering itself through you, pattern calling pattern, until the hidden corridor becomes obvious. If a doubt visits, you greet it with the same steadiness you offer the moon. Doubt is permitted to ask its questions. It is not permitted to drive. You are allowed to be new at this and still be accurate. You are allowed to feel the tremor of magnitude while remaining simple. Simplicity is not the absence of depth. It is depth without drama. The lamp of your attention remains lit. You are the keeper and the kept. There is a difference between being looked at and being seen. Looked at is measurement, seen is belonging. Tonight, you are seen by the precise geometry you came from. The pattern recognizes itself and relaxes its guard around you. The body understands this first. The jaw unfixes. The tongue rests in the cradle of the mouth. The breath travels lower, discovering rooms in the lungs you have never visited. In those rooms, a phrase forms without words. You fit. Fitting is not conformity. It is fidelity to the higher timeline that has been asking for your signature. Your signature is your coherence, your willingness to be internally consistent with the love you name as true. When you keep that consistency, timelines stop competing. The louder option does not win. The truer one does. You recognize the truer one by the way it asks you to be more yourself instead of less. Nothing essential about you is reduced to earn it. Nothing essential about you is inflated to keep it. If the mind searches for instructions, offer it a single, patient practice. Feel the light behind your eyes and let it expand by an inch. Hold no picture, add no strain. Let the warmth across the chest agree to stay. Stay with the eclipse halo quality of now the ring of permission around everything you are aware of. The outer world may keep its noise. Within, a bell is ringing at a frequency that makes surrender indistinguishable from strength. You have been chosen by what you chose, slowly, over years. The small truth over the loud performance, the gentle refusal over the violent approval, the lamp over the spectacle. Tonight returns the favor. You are recognized. You are read correctly by the very page you thought was blank. When you whisper thank you without sound, you feel the thank you echo back from somewhere both above and inside, as if altitude and interior were the same place wearing different skies. Where the mind loosens, the signal threads through effortlessly. You close your eyes not to leave the world but to let it assemble closer. Darkness is not absence. It is the velvet screen upon which the real picture decides to speak. Behind your eyes, a hush arranges itself into symmetry. The breath lowers, the chest warms, as if a small sunrise were being rehearsed beneath your sternum. You are inside a stillness window, a precise interval where the ordinary clock loosens and a more elegant timing reveals its hands. The first image is not an image but a temperature, cool air brushing the inner face of your forehead, followed by a soft ignition in the center of the chest. Stardust collects there, pinpricks of brightness gathering into a ring, an eclipse halo that does not hide the light but makes it legible. Around the ring, threads extend like filaments of intention. They reach outward not to grasp, but to remember their correspondences. Everywhere they touch, something recognizes you back. The ring widens into a corridor, flawless, wall-less, yet unmistakably away. Its edges shimmer with light codes, tiny syllables of radiance that do not need decoding because they are the language your cells were written in. You do not walk so much as allow yourself to be carried by consent. Consent is movement enough. The corridor curves with the grace of a promise being kept. At a bend in the corridor, You see two faint horizons occupying the same space, overlapping like invitations on translucent paper. One is familiar, a looping neighborhood of choices that keep returning to themselves. The other is quiet and newly bright, as if its sun rises from within. This is your first clear glimpse of timeline bifurcation. Nothing shouts, nothing threatens. The two horizons are simply the same music, played by different instruments, one fatigued, one freshly tuned. You feel the decision not in your head but at the small, reliable axle behind your heart. It doesn't spin faster, it steadies. The vision deepens. You find yourself standing at the shoreline of a black lake sky, and the sky is standing inside you. Across the surface, constellations rearrange like flocks. Their geometry keeps returning to a simple figure, two arcs meeting to form a gate. The gate is moonlit on every side because light is entering from directions you have no names for. When you breathe slowly, the gate breathes with you. It is not a barrier, it is an organ. You understand that entry is not granted, it is mirrored. From the left, the scent of rain that hasn't fallen. From the right, a faint bell, as if metal remembered the moment it first learned to sing. Above, a veil of aurora braids itself into letters. The letters are not alphabetic but relational, distances becoming friendships, angles becoming kindnesses. Each line settles into the next, the way forgiveness settles into bone without spectacle, with total consequence. You realize the vision is not forecasting, it is reporting on what your willingness has already changed. Beneath the image, a feeling, certain friendships loosening, certain work ripening, certain habits bowing themselves out without argument. You see how the corridor you walked is the subtle choreography of your daily accuracies, how you told the truth a few minutes sooner, how you unclenched one breath earlier, how you let a tenderness remain unnamed long enough to become a law. The field of remembrance brightens at each of these coordinates, as if someone were marking a star map you had already flown by instinct. Out ahead, a figure appears, not other, not separate, an outline made of the same silver the moon keeps for ceremonial nights. It does not approach, it reveals proximity. The outline wears your stance, your quiet, your exact way of holding the jaw when you're listening to something you respect. You recognize this presence as the unarguable version of you, not perfected, not inflated precise. Its gaze is not piercing, it's generous enough to hold the whole room of you without rearrangement. When it raises its hand, the gate of arcs brightens and you understand. The vision is asking for participation, not permission. You step not forward, but inward toward the angle of trust that first opened the corridor. Warmth rises, steady as a votive. A lucid current lifts the back body and lengthens you by a quiet degree. The two horizons overlay again. You feel their different gravities. One tugs with the familiarity of worry. The other invites with the unfamiliar ease of belonging. You choose ease, and in choosing, you notice that ease is the more courageous option because it refuses to negotiate with your old alarms. As the choice lands, the black lake sky ripples. The constellations reknit themselves into a new circumference, and the gate becomes a bridge. Under your feet, each step rings lightly like a clear bowl. The body drinks the sound and converts it into steadiness. Your breath is a metronome, set to mercy. You notice no rush. Futures line the banks like trees, but their leaves are not demanding your touch. They're praising the air you're making with your walking. At the far end of the bridge, the corridor narrows to a single luminous thread that enters the center of your chest and vanishes without vanishing. The halo does not fade, it integrates. You feel ordinary in the best way. Nothing added, nothing missing, inventory accurate. The vision does not end, it localizes. It has given you a map you do not have to memorize because the map is now a sense you can follow. You open your eyes, and the room is both the same and more honest. The moon outside is the moon inside is the moon everywhere, and your face belongs to it without effort. Under the lids of stillness, symbols align into language. You are not required to believe. You are invited to understand. Understanding here is not an argument, it is a coordination, a way your body, mind, and breath agree to describe what they already cooperate with. Begin with the simplest statement. Experience is not just happening to you, It is happening with you. Your attention is not a flashlight pointed at a pre-made world. It is a tuning fork that convinces matter to gather as music. This is the quiet physics of participation. In the quantum field, potentialities are neighbors. They do not stand in line. They remain available, waiting for a conductor. You are not the conductor by force, you are the conductor by attunement. When you stabilize your breath and let the chest warmth stay, you're performing a minute, repeatable experiment in signal purity. Noise decreases, signal becomes legible. Probability densities, those fogs of possibility, condense around the notes you sustain. What you sustain is not an image, but a signature, the felt tone of truth when you hold it without bargaining. The mechanism is humble. Your nervous system has only two primary postures: protection and presence. Protection is useful when a real threat arrives. It is a poor architect for wonder. Presence is not naivete. It is calibrated availability. In presence, microtensions release the jaw, the diaphragm, the delicate nest behind the eyes, and the system stops spending all its currency on surveillance. That surplus becomes signal. Signal organizes reality. This is what mystics call grace, and what physics calls reduced entropy in a local frame. Both are accurate from different altitudes. You have been trained to chase states. Tonight asks you to keep a trait: coherence. Coherence is the mutual agreement of parts, breath with heart, thought with action, value with choice, until the whole system becomes predictably kind to itself. In coherent systems, small input yields outsized effect because the energy is not hemorrhaging into contradiction. This is why a single honest breath can change the texture of a room. The breath doesn't move the furniture. It moves the field that tells furniture how to behave. The old observer loop kept you in rehearsal, watching yourself, watch yourself, a hall of mirrors where every reflection critiqued the last. The loop is not evil. It is simply expensive. It burns through attention, which is your non-renewable currency for the moments that matter. Breaking the loop is not a dramatic smash. It is a gentler accuracy. You stop measuring yourself and start including yourself. Inclusion lowers noise. Lower noise raises signal. Raised signal invites the world to agree with what you actually mean. Consider entanglement without the museum glass. You are not tied to distant stars by superstition. You are joined to the circumstances you bless. By the way, blessing changes your posture. When you give wholehearted attention to a person, a work, a prayer, you install a corridor between you. Through that corridor, information and timing move faster than your plans. This is not magical thinking. It is relational physics. Your commitments prearrange introductions between you and your future, and those introductions manifest as coincidences that stop pretending to be random. Then the threshold. Every breakthrough carries a phase transition, a shift where quantity becomes quality, where the accumulation of small accuracies tips the system into a new regime. Water does not try harder to be steam. It is given enough heat, and the lattice changes. You have been warming for years. The practices that seemed minor, one breath, one forgiveness, one precise no, were degrees added to the pot. Tonight's alignment adds the degree that changes the state. The same particles, your history, your gifts reorganize into a more spacious law of motion. You do not become unrecognizable, you become less negotiated. Notice how the explanation never asks you to strain. Strain is a symptom that you're pushing in a direction the field cannot sustain. Ease is not laziness, it's the sign your vectors agree. Agreement does not mean comfort, it means clarity. Clarity can be tender and fierce in the same minute. When coherent clarity enters a room, what doesn't belong becomes beautifully obvious, not wrong, not shameful, simply non-resonant. You do not conquer it, you stop feeding it. What about the world and its noise? You do not need the planet to be quiet for you to become accurate. Accuracy is local. Local accuracy scales. When one instrument tunes, the orchestra gains a reference. In practical terms, this means your next conversation, your next boundary, your next willingness to be seen is not tiny. It is a template. Templates travel. They jump bodies the way laughter jumps tables. This is the civic side of mysticism. Private coherence becomes public architecture. If the mind asks, "What must I visualize?" offer it a simpler discipline. Keep the warmth across the chest, keep the breath low and patient, keep the gaze soft enough that light can enter both directions. Hold a single sentence at the level of sensation, not words. I allow what is true to become visible. The field does not misunderstand clarity. It has been waiting for a stable receiver to broadcast through. Tonight, that receiver is you. And should fear appear, greet it as weather, real, moving, not sovereign. Name it once, without theater, then return to the body's reliable measurements. Is the jaw soft? Is the tongue resting? Is the breath lower than usual? Has the light behind the eyes kept its inch of expansion? If yes, the corridor remains open. If no, you adjust a millimeter at a time until yes returns. In this practice, science and sacrament shake hands. Both bow to repeatability. Both honor what works without worshipping a story about why. You do not need permission to keep this simple. The universe loves simple the way seeds love dark soil. Not because it is easy, but because it is generative. The less you perform, the more accurately reality can take your measurements and respond in kind. Measurement here is not judgment, it's courtship. The world proposes, you answer with posture. Posture becomes pattern. Pattern becomes home. The field leans nearer, arranging a simpler geometry before you. You lift your gaze and the room becomes a shoreline again, but this time the tide is people. Even if you're alone, you feel the contours of countless lives pressing softly against your awareness, like waves that learned manners. Faces you know, strangers you will never meet, ancestors who traveled by breath and story, all appearing as facets of a single surface that reflects you without distortion. The mirror is not glass, it is attention shared. You realize how every kindness you almost offered keeps orbiting, waiting to become gravity. Listen to the planet breathing through its cities, forests, kitchens at midnight. The sound is familiar, a crowd exhaling at the same tempo as your chest when you finally unclench. That tempo is how coherence scales. It's not a slogan, it's a rhythm that your nervous system recognizes before your mind names it. When your breath steadies, you broadcast a reference tone that invites other bodies to remember their original key. You don't fix them, you hold the tuning long enough for them to hear their own truer pitch. The collective is not an abstraction. It's the waitress whose hands are cracked from hot water and grace. It's the child inventing new constellations with glow-in-the-dark stars on a bedroom ceiling. It's the elder who carries silence like an heirloom and gives it away for free. Each one is a mirror because each one is you, rotated. When you regard them with uncomplicated regard, the mirror clears. You stop measuring, you start belonging. Belonging is the only metric the heart trusts. You once believed your spiritual life was private. It is intimate, yes, but intimacy is different from secrecy. Intimacy is precision in relationship. Secrecy is fear in costume. The field of remembrance does not reward secrecy. It rewards fidelity to what is generative in the open. When you keep your inner lamp quietly lit in public, on the train, in line, on a Tuesday, people recalibrate around you without knowing why. They stand a little straighter. They speak a little kinder. They remember to look up. You did not convince them. You gave them back their own measurements. Consider the physics from another angle. What you bless, you become entangled with. Bless the street you walk, and the street begins returning shortcuts you didn't know existed. Bless the meeting you dread, and a new sentence arrives in the exact mouth that needed it. Bless the stranger, and 3 hours later, someone else holds a door you didn't think would open. This is not barter, it's the natural economy of attention. In the currency of presence, interest compounds as timing. You worry sometimes that the world is too loud for your small lamp. You forget that darkness is the perfect co-conspirator for light. All a lamp requires to be sovereign is a steady wick. When the news shouts, you can stay specific. Specificity is mercy. Specificity is how a prayer knows where to land. Instead of reaching into the entire sky with panic, you place your breath precisely into the moment you are inhabiting and let its clarity ripple outward. The ripples go farther than your plans. This is morphic resonance doing its quiet work pattern, recognizing pattern until neighborhoods of coherence spring up like night-blooming jasmine. Look into the mirror again and notice how quickly judgment tries to fog it. Judgment is seductive because it feels like speed, but speed is not the same as sight. Sight requires patience. And patience is a kind of power that doesn't need to announce itself. When you refuse the cheap thrill of being right about someone, you permit the expensive miracle of being true with them. Truth has a texture soft at the edges, exact at the center. It's the same texture as your chest warmth when you breathe slowly and let your shoulder blades rest like open wings. If you grieve, let it be honest grief. Honest grief is disinfected of performance and becomes clean water for the field. The mirror can hold your sorrow without cracking because it is made of what you and the world have always shared. Impermanence, choosing tenderness anyway. When you let grief move without trying to monetize it for meaning, it leaves behind a clarity even sunlight envies. That clarity is how you recognize the next right word, the next right boundary, the next right silence. The mirror also shows you your invitations. Perhaps you see the conversation you've delayed because love is inconvenient. Perhaps you see the apology that is lighter than pride. Perhaps you see the craft that keeps asking to be practiced when no one is watching. Each invitation is modest and luminous, like a crescent moon just after sunset. You do not have to take all of them. You take the nearest one and discover it was a hinge. The larger doors you worried about swing easily once the hinge is honest. Feel the body agree. The breath remains low. The light behind your eyes holds its inch of expansion like a promise it enjoys keeping. Fingers soften. The jaw unfixes another degree. Your skin perceives the room's air as friendly. You are not trying to be good. You are consenting to be accurate. Accuracy is moral because it refuses theatrics. It lets love be uncrowded enough to do its serious, ordinary work. What, then, is your offering to the collective tonight? Not a performance, not a grand solution. Your offering is a steady signal, a way of standing that refuses to collapse into spectacle or cynicism. When you stand that way, others remember they can. Some will not. That is allowed. The mirror is not a demand. It is a permission. You keep your lamp lit. You bless the street. You take the modest invitation. You let timing be intelligent. You let the higher timeline choose you by noticing that it already has. The horizon exhales. Nearness replaces distance. It arrives the way moonlight decides a surface quietly, then all at once. You sense it first as a subtle pressure change in the room, a gentler gravity, as if every object were consenting to be exactly where it is. Your breath follows the cue and lengthens without persuasion. Warmth gathers behind the sternum and holds. The light behind your eyes brightens a shade, not theatrical, simply precise. You are standing inside the hinge, where two futures share a single breath. This is timeline bifurcation, made intimate. Understand the choice as geometry rather than drama. One path is friction you know too well, the corridor of almosts, where you barter with yourself and call it prudence. The other path does not glitter. It clarifies. It does not seduce. It aligns. You know it by the way your body becomes simpler around it. Shoulder blades soften. Jaw unhooks. The chest feels like a small hearth that remembers winter without fearing it. Coherence is the compass here, your parts agreeing to stop impersonating each other and resume their original jobs. When coherence rises, confusion loses its funding. Do not mistake momentum for mandate. The familiar timeline is loud because you've been rehearsing its lines for years. Your mouth remembers the dialogue, even when your heart has resigned the role. The higher alternative speaks softly because it doesn't audition. It waits for accuracy. Accuracy is not severe. It is merciful enough to end the argument that keeps you tired. When you face both paths honestly, you discover the old one requires constant management, while the new one requires consistent sincerity. Management inflates the self and empties the day. Sincerity empties the self and fills the day. This is the physics of a phase transition. You are not conquering an old state. You are being warmed 1 degree beyond its jurisdiction. The lattice of habit loosens. The same molecules, your history and gifts, reassemble around a saner center. No fireworks, only a decisive softening. The world outside may look unchanged. Within, the organizing law is different. What once demanded negotiation now requires only truthful presence. Presence is not passive. It is the exacting art of refusing to leave yourself while meeting what is in front of you with unarmored attention. Let the senses keep you honest. Notice the eclipse, halo quality, edging the ordinary. A mug, a doorframe, The night air at the window all faintly rimmed, as if stardust were a verb. This is not a hallucination. It is perception freed from bracing. When bracing stops, detail becomes kind. You see the room without assigning it a verdict. You see yourself without needing a sentence. In that mercy, timing becomes intelligent. Calls happen when they should. Doors open because you stopped leaning on them. People arrive because there is finally space to arrive into. At bifurcation, the destiny vector is not a thunderbolt. It is a straight line that stops apologizing for being straight. You feel it in the way hesitation no longer garners interest. You can still stall, but stalling now tastes like lukewarm water, drinkable, unnecessary. The vector doesn't hurry you, it escorts you. It knows the exact speed at which your nervous system can stay included. If you are tempted to sprint, return to the small practices that changed your climate. One true breath, one exact boundary, one unperformed kindness. Those are the levers that tilt the world. Fear will visit. Let it arrive as weather, not legislation. When it speaks, do not debate, measure instead. Is the breath low? Is the chest warm? Has the light behind the eyes kept its inch? If the measurements hold, proceed. If they don't, you slow by a single degree until they do. This is how you choose without abandoning yourself. The higher path is not the braver face, it is the kinder interior. Kindness to your interior is not indulgence. It is infrastructure for endurance. You will be asked for a small vow, not a performance, not a public proclamation, an inward consent you can keep on a Tuesday when no one is watching. Name it simply, I will not negotiate against what I know. The moment you keep that vow once, the field rewrites your proximity to what belongs to you. Emails that were lost are found. A conversation that needed 3 months to ripen suddenly ripens. This is not favoritism. It is the mathematics of reduced internal friction. Systems with fewer leaks carry farther with less fuel. You may feel the old loop trying to reinstall, checking how enlightened you appear, measuring progress like a suspicious accountant. Smile at the observer loop and let it retire. You do not need its commentary to remain precise. Precision now is the felt congruence between what you value and what you enact. If a boundary is needed, set it without theater. If an apology is warranted, offer it without autobiography. If rest is accurate, rest completely as an act of participation, not escape. Participation without pretense is the signature of the higher track. If you listen closely, you'll hear a bell so faint it seems remembered rather than rung. That bell is your permission. The room around you does not blur, it resolves. You can name 3 true things: the temperature of the air against your skin, the weight of your feet, the exact pace of your breath. Truth localizes like that. Local truth scales. Scale enough local truths and the map redraws itself while you stand exactly where you are. Stand now. Let the spine lengthen by a quiet inch. Allow the heart to feel moonlit from within. Imagine a thin silver thread passing through the center of your chest, tugging not forward but clear. Clarity is the only direction needed. Tonight's alignment does not demand spectacle. It invites steadiness. You provide the steadiness. The field supplies the rest. Your awareness untangles a knot, and the road straightens. You choose clarity without ceremony, and clarity begins to choose you back. Integration is not an event you chase. It is the way your body rearranges furniture after a guest decides to stay. The guest is this frequency, subtle, lucid, exact, and you greet it by letting rooms open inside you that were once kept for weather. Your breath becomes the housekeeper. It moves from doorway to doorway, dusting the corners where habit used to store its boxes. Each exhale is a small relocation towards simplicity. Start with the measurements that do not lie. The chest remains quietly warm, as if a small ember has found its proper bowl. The light behind the eyes is still widened by that sacred inch, admitting the world without flood. The jaw has forgotten how to clench as a default. These are not decorations. They are instruments tuned to the new key. When the instruments agree, the song does not have to be loud to carry. This is coherence behaving like gravity. What is aligned begins to gather what belongs to it. Your day becomes the laboratory. You lift a mug and notice the eclipse halo edging its rim. You answer a message and feel the exact moment honesty overtakes performance. You step outside and the night air settles on the skin like permission. Nothing supernatural happens. The natural becomes super in its precision. The field of remembrance recognizes the signature you're keeping and returns it as timing. One sentence arriving in the mouth that needed it. One invitation clearing from the noise. One door opening with no hinge squeak because you stopped leaning on it. Integration is the art of staying while changing. You do not abandon the ordinary. You refine it until it admits its original shimmer. You cook, but slower. You speak, but with fewer apologies. You rest, but as an offering to the pattern, not an escape from it. The frequency does not require new costumes. It requires faithful posture. Posture is the silent theology the world believes about you before you speak. When posture steadies, the mind is relieved of its exhausting PR job. Relief is the first miracle. Feel how relationships translate under this steadiness. People do not need you to dazzle them. They need you to be measurable. In conversation, you keep the breath low, and suddenly the room has corners again. Complexity stops, pretending to be chaos. Your attention meets another person's attention, and the two create a corridor no one owns. Through that corridor, nuance travels faster than defense. This is everyday entanglement, not sticky attachment, but lawful intimacy that exchanges signal without stealing autonomy. You watch as honesty becomes contagious. No campaign required, only continuity. Your work, too, learns the rhythm. Tasks arrange themselves by sincerity rather than urgency theater. You place the truest action nearest to your morning and let it set the day's lattice. Each small completion smooths the next. Integration refuses the bargain that says only large moves count. Large moves without this frequency are noisy collapses in waiting. Small moves saturated with it are structural. Structural things last because they honor the math of stamina. There will be attempts to reinstall the old architecture, tiny auditions of doubt, brief commercials for delay. You do not resist them with teeth, you disinterest them with accuracy. Accuracy looks like a 5-second return to the stillness window between breaths, where choice remembers it has more than two options. Inside that window, you feel the page turn without a hand. The sentence continues in cleaner ink. You realize how much of your life can be rewritten by refusing to add commentary to weather. Let the body teach the theology. The tongue rests, the throat widens, the shoulder blades feel less like shields and more like parentheses that keep the heart's paragraph clear. The spine lengthens as if a moon thread were being gently drawn from the crown. The pelvis grows heavy and kind, an anchor that does not bark orders. You are not doing these things. You are stopping the interruptions that once kept them from happening. This is what the sages meant by yielding, not collapse, but intelligent softness that outlasts hard postures because it does not fracture under load. Integration is patient with the parts that arrive late. A frightened habit at the edge of you will try to negotiate its survival with speed or spectacle. Do not exile it. Give it good work. Assign it to breathing, to sweeping the threshold, to counting the seconds of a sip. When fear is given a measurable task inside a coherent system, it becomes focus. Focus is devotion with its hands busy. Devotion is how light codes complete their weaving through repeated simple actions that say yes without applause. As you keep saying yes, the world answers with proportion. Some doors will close because they belong to a version of you that cannot keep this signal steady. Let them close kindly. Some friendships will shift terrain. Let love choose the right distance. Some opportunities will insist on your old contortions. Their insistence is your clarity. You do not punish what no longer matches. You stop subsidizing what keeps you split. Wholeness is frugal that way. It spends where return is generative, not dramatic. If a prayer is needed, keep it tactile and short. Let my interior be consistent. Consistency is the nobility of integration. Nobility does not demand. It dignifies. Dignity is the way the higher timeline wears your steps without chafing. You notice how walking becomes less about arriving and more about teaching each square of ground, the softness of your foot. Everywhere you go, a small permission remains behind, and places begin to behave like allies because they have tasted how you treat them. You may never receive credit for becoming this accurate. That is the sweet relief. Credit is a currency for performances. Presence is its own wealth. Presence buys back hours that used to disappear into self-argument. It purchases a quiet immune system, a patient tongue, a generosity that does not keep receipts. Presence, kept long enough, turns into culture, first in the room, then in the neighborhood, then in the weathers of a world that wants to remember how to be gentle and exact at once. Light chooses simpler words, and the heart understands. You do not chase quiet. You let quiet discover where you have stopped arguing. The room holds a listening that does not belong to furniture. Air cools along the eyelids, and the light behind your eyes steadies into a soft circumference. Breath lowers by itself, as if a wiser animal inside you has taken the lead. This is the chapel without walls, the stillness window opening wider than thought, wider than intention, wide enough to include what you used to exile. Nothing performs here. Everything is allowed to be true at its own pace. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of struggle with what is sounding. A neighbor's door, a distant engine, the moon-shaped hum of the night, each becomes texture rather than interruption. Your nervous system, freed from policing reality, begins to translate instead of defend. Translation is love, doing its mathematics. In that math, small frictions resolve without public ceremony. Places inside you that once insisted on commentary go quiet, not because they are ignored, but because they are finally seen. You practice a simpler fidelity. Feel what is true, remain. Remaining is the art that upgrades every other art. It is not passivity, it is precision about direction. The direction here is inward, but not into a cave, into a meadow that exists behind the ribs, where grasses of attention lean toward a wind older than your biography. In that meadow, the field of remembrance brightens. Memory here is not a storyline, it is a lawful nearness to what your cells already know. You do not have to retrieve it, you have to stop crowding it. Notice how coherence becomes audible when you stop narrating. Heart and breath align like two slow metronomes agreeing on one tempo. The jaw unfurls, tongue rests in the cradle of the mouth, spine lengthens by a quiet inch, as if moonlight were pulling a silver thread through you. This is the wordless consent that invites a universe to take accurate measurements. The measurements do not judge, they court. Courtship in this silence feels like warmth sliding across the chest, like gravity remembering your exact name. Old habits will try to hold a meeting. The mind will schedule an agenda. What to fix, what to display, what to avoid. You bow to the mind and return to the ground of sensing. You count 4 soft seconds in, 6 softer seconds out, and the boardroom empties. The dominant predator in your forest was urgency. It leaves when watched by patient eyes. You discover that watching without prosecution dissolves the observer loop that kept you braced. Watching becomes welcoming. Welcoming becomes structure. Structure becomes peace that does not perform itself. In this phase, time behaves like a lake at dawn. Hours do not disappear, they clarify. You accomplish less drama and more reality. Emails answer themselves in your absence, because absence is not vacancy, it is uncluttered availability that teaches timing where to land. A conversation that required a speech resolves in a sentence that arrives on its own feet. The body notices this economy. The shoulders fall from their old theater. The diaphragm stops doing overtime. The skin decides the room is friendly. Silence also reveals what is not yours to carry. You can feel the difference between fatigue and depletion, between honest labor and self-cancellation. When you sit in the meadow, burdens announce their proper owners by weight. Some are yours to keep because they build capacity. Some are yours to bless and set down. The act of setting down is not rejection, it is reverent accuracy. Accuracy is how love remains durable. It refuses to counterfeit generosity that bankrupts the center it is meant to nourish. Let intuition speak here without costume. It does not shout, it points. A name flickers, not as gossip but as a small assignment to send kindness. A sentence forms, simple enough to withstand daylight. A boundary presents itself, elegant as a closed gate that still belongs to the path. You test these by sensation, not by debate. Does the chest warmth hold while the thought stands in the room? Does the breath stay low? Does the inner light keep its inch? If yes, you trust. If not, You let it pass like weather that does not match the season. Silence is a builder. It lays foundations invisible to hurry. You will find, a week from now, a door opening exactly where your patience spent its evenings. You will find, without striving, that strangers grow familiar around your steadiness because morphic resonance has been quietly at work, pattern recognizing pattern, until culture condenses where spectacle once evaporated. You are not managing outcomes. You are tending climate. Climate governs what can grow without strain. This is the agriculture of destiny. If grief visits, the meadow has room. Grief is not an intruder here. It is a guest who brings water to the roots. You let it pour. You do not make a religion of it. You do not monetize it for meaning. You let it rinse the stones and leave them honest. When it finishes, gratitude does not rush in with banners. Gratitude sits down beside you and shares the same silence. You understand then why sages called stillness the highest generosity. It allows truth to arrive at full height without being hurried into a costume. When thought returns, it is cleaner. It selects fewer words and those words behave. When action returns, it is quieter, and yet outcomes multiply because the signal is not leaking into self-argument. You become a place where others can find their own silence without asking permission. You do not instruct. You exemplify. Examples travel farther than advice because the body trusts what it feels more than what it is told. Remain a little longer. Let the meadow write your name in a script only light uses. Feel the moon draw its pale circle across the floor of your chest and seal nothing, only confirm. You are not trying to be holy. You are remembering how to be accurate. In accuracy, holiness happens as a side effect. Rooms feel kinder, clocks stop threatening, and your steps inherit a rhythm that refuses to betray itself for applause. You rise without breaking the quiet you carry. You walk without waking what is meant to dream. Silence nods. Permission is granted for the next unveiling. You do not wait for permission, you become it. The air is cool along your eyelids, and the warmth across your chest steadies like a small hearth that knows its job. Breath lowers, shoulders unhook. The light behind your eyes keeps its patient inch. You are not trying to feel different. You are allowing what is already different to organize your steps. Activation is less like a switch and more like a vow your body understands before your mind phrases it. Begin where contact is truest, with the texture of now. Place attention on the quiet ember beneath your sternum. With the inhale, you feel the ember glow. With the exhale, you feel its heat spread through the ribs until posture lengthens by a gentle degree. This is not imagination. This is metabolism receiving instruction. Your cells translate signal into chemistry, chemistry into stance, stance into signature. The quantum field does not misread signatures. It gathers around the pattern you keep. Name the pattern without words. It is the decision to remain available to truth at the speed of breath. It is the refusal to rehearse performance when sincerity is sufficient. It is the sweetness of not decorating the moment you are finally willing to inhabit. In this keeping, coherence thickens like morning light. What used to slip through you begins to stay. Timing becomes precise because waste has left the room. Waste of commentary, waste of apology, waste of the old energy economy where you spent 15 units of attention to move 1 inch. Now 1 honest inch moves 15 things. Let the hands remember. 1 palm over the chest, the other over the navel. Inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6. The belly softens without collapse. The heart receives without theater. Your spine becomes a tuning rod drawing a thread of pale current through the crown. You are not pulling light down. You are stopping the interference that once blocked the way light moves by itself. The body, relieved of its overtime, starts to practice intelligence again. The simple intelligence of staying. Activation also asks for a sentence you can keep. Not a slogan, a practice. Say inwardly, at the level of sensation, I keep my interior consistent. Feel how the room agrees. Feel how unnecessary strategies fall like old scaffolding from a building that finally trusts its own walls. Strategies are loud when trust is low. Trust returns when you stop shocking your nervous system with stories it cannot metabolize. Let story quiet. Let the facts of warmth, breath, lengthened spine, soft jaw carry more authority than the theater of doubt. Now, put your attention in the soles of your feet. Notice the specific pressure of ground, the way gravity is not a weight but a conversation. You are rehearsing the choreography of follow-through. Activation is not the adrenaline spike of a new plan. It is the steady gait of a new law. Laws do not shout, they govern. The law here is fidelity to the truer thing, kept long enough to change the furniture of your hours. When fidelity holds, the destiny vector stops wasting time proving itself and begins moving you as if you were its favorite instrument. The room subtly brightens, not visibly, but relationally. Objects gain the soft rim you've come to recognize, as though each thing remembers why it is where it is. You speak one sentence aloud, slow enough that breath can keep up. I agree with what is true even when I am new at it. The sentence sits cleanly in the center of you. No performance, no inflation. You feel its edges fit the room. Truth well fitted does not need amplification. It carries. Old impulses will make a final case for speed or spectacle. You answer them with a smaller, more elegant action. You choose the next right move and give it full presence. Send the message that clarifies without prosecuting. Place the glass where it truly belongs instead of the almost place. Step outside and let the night air cool the brow until thinking relaxes into sight. These modest obediences are how light codes complete their weaving through tasks that do not look holy until you see what they prevent. Relapse into noise. If you must speak to fear, speak gently. Tell it what job it can do. Measure your breath. Count your steps. Keep the gate of your yes narrow and true. Fear relieved of governance becomes focus. Focus applied to kindness becomes craft. Craft performed without vanity becomes culture. You are building culture wherever you stand, of rooms that treat bodies as honored guests, of hours that do not punish slowness, of choices that do not counterfeit love to purchase approval. Now the voice you have been hearing from the horizon steps closer and becomes your own tone, unforced. You feel the calm urgency of a bell rung once and still ringing. Do nothing dramatic with it. Let it move furniture. Let it rearrange the top 3 priorities of your day until they form a clean line you cannot mistake. Do the first one with the same sincerity you would offer a prayer. Do the second without talking about the first. Do the third as if no one will ever know but the room. The room always knows. When you wonder how to seal this step so it holds, seal it with tenderness. Place your palm to your chest and whisper, barely audible to the air. Whisper into the quiet, I remember. Then type, I remember the prophecy. Let the sentence become temperature rather than performance. Let it warm the ribcage until the body believes you. Belief at the level of tissue is what carries in storms. You are not ascending away from the world. You are entering it so precisely that evasion loses its glamour. You will sleep well because your hours stopped arguing. You will wake clear because your first breath remembers its work. You will walk like a person who trusts the ground, and ground trusts back. This is activation, the marriage of vow and posture, of breath and deed, of the unspectacular, yes kept long enough to become luminous. Between remembering and action, a path appears without announcement. You do not rise into this, you relax into it. The room is ordinary, the breath unhurried, the warmth across your chest as reliable as a small hearth doing its quiet work. You are not waiting to be anointed by spectacle. You are consenting to be read accurately by the world you help compose. The seal is not a stamp imposed from above. It is an agreement revealed from within the moment. Your living signature and the world's honest measurements match without argument. This is the prophetic seal. Feel the field of remembrance brighten where your keeping has been faithful. Every small vow you honored when no one watched becomes a star returning to its constellation. You are not improved, you are integrated. Your attention no longer leaks into the old observer loop, trying to manage appearances. Management is retired. Belonging remains. Belonging is the tenderness of lawfulness, the way coherence turns love into architecture, posture into policy, breath into corridor. This seal does not separate you from the world, it returns you to it at a higher resolution. Streets behave like allies because your steps stopped negotiating against themselves. Conversations stop auditioning for approval and begin building culture in the space between voices. Work loses its theater and keeps its craft. Rest ceases to be escape and becomes devotion to the rhythm that sustains the whole. Your hours inherit a simple nobility. They tell the truth gently, and the truth holds. If a future leans near, it does so without threat. This is the higher timeline choosing you by recognizing the steadiness you now maintain without drama. You do not chase the horizon, you become accurate where you stand, and the horizon enrolls that accuracy. The old panic mistook motion for destiny. The new steadiness understands that destiny is a direction kept, not a stage reached. The destiny vector is simply your uncompromised, yes, walked at the speed your nervous system can love. Let this be practical. Keep the chest warm, one hand if needed, quietly. Keep the breath low, 4 in, 2 hold, 6 out. Keep the light behind the eyes soft and available. When doubt visits, measure rather than argue. When fear arrives, give it honest work. When grief pours, let it rinse the stones clean. When joy appears, allow it to be ordinary so it can stay. You are not optimizing the moment, you are staying with it until it tells you what it is for. And now, as the night completes its teaching, hear how simple the seal sounds when spoken without performance. You agree to remain consistent with what you already know to be true. That is all. That is everything. Because truth kept at the level of breath becomes geometry, and geometry becomes a gate that will recognize you in every weather. You do not need to remember all the words. You need to remember the measurements: warm chest, low breath, soft gaze, exact kindness. Nothing is added to you. What is not you falls away. You are not being sent elsewhere. You are being trusted here. The moon sets its silver circle upon the floor of your chest and does not close anything it confirms. Walk from this room like a person who has stopped arguing with their own light. Let your precision be gentle. Let your gentleness be structural. The seal holds because you do. The field has named you. Proceed as the naming.